Hello and welcome to CMMI-TV. I'm Jeff Dalton from AskTheCMMI-Appraiser.com. And this month I'm writing about CMMI 2.0, scheduled to be released March 31st, 2018. CMMI 2.0 is the most major release of the CMMI in the last 7 years, which in 2010 gave us version 1.3. Any of you that have seen me speak or read my blog know that I'm a big fan of the generic practices. And so today we're going to talk about those. And the topic of today's video is Bon Voyage generic practices. For those of you that have read my blog, you know that I'm passionate about these things and that they're really the differentiator for CMMI, the thing that really made it tick. In my classes, I've taught over 2,000 students this. I've said, write the letters MVP, most valuable practices, next to the generic practices before you do anything. Because we tend to focus on the process areas, the project planning, project monitoring, integrated project management, technical solutions, and so forth. We tend to focus on these things and not those all-important 12 generic practices that are really the secret sauce of how to make process work in your organization. So last year when they announced that they were considering getting rid of the generic practices, I fired off a passionate letter to Kirk Batula and Dan Torrens over at the CMMI Institute. And I said, please, whatever you do, don't drop the generic practices. They're the thing that make the CMMI tick. Well, version 2.0, they're gone. But there's some good news. So as you know, there's 12 of these, at least in the staged version of the model. Things like establishing an organizational policy, plan for the process, provide resources, assign responsibility, train people, and all these things that are really tick marks for the things that you need to do to successfully deploy a process. Without them, process just becomes binders on a shelf that nobody's. I always joke around. I say, processes, we got binders full of them. And lots of companies do, and there's a lot of dust on those binders. And the thing that they don't do to make themselves successful is they don't do the 12 things that were listed right there on the front of the book. The very first page of the blue CMMI dev book talks about the generic practices. And so they're so important. So I fired off this letter and I said, please don't do that. And they still did it, but they must have at least heard a little bit about what I said, because they created 2 new practice areas. And if you've watched my earlier video, you know that the term process area no longer exists. It's now called a practice area. And these 2 practice areas are called governance, with the initials GOV, and implementation infrastructure with the letters II. And if you take a look at these 2 practice areas, you'll notice that the practices within them read more or less the same as the generic practices: establish a policy, plan for the process, train people, and so on and so forth. A couple of the generic practices are sprinkled throughout other parts of the new CMMI 2.0 model, but the lion's share of them are contained within GOV and II. So here's one of the tricks. In order to be level 2 in any particular practice area, you also have to be level 2 in GOV and II. And so if you want to be maturity level 2, you have to get to level 2 in GOV and II. So it's a little bit like the old stage equivalency from CMMI 1.3. And really, if you took my class, I would have people put one finger on the maturity level and one finger on generic goal 2 and say, that's how you get to generic goal 2. And then you slide your finger down to number 3. That's how you get to be maturity level 3. And it's a little bit like that. They've just made it a little more explicit. If you want to be level 3, you have to successfully demonstrate performance in all of the practice areas related to maturity level 3 and take Gov and II all the way up to level 3 as well. So it's not that much different than the original generic practices, but it's a similar concept. So the good news is all that stuff is still there. I would love to have them kept my beloved generic practices, but I think Gov and II are going to be just fine. I'm looking forward to working with it starting on March 31st, 2018. And if you want to be amongst the first people in the DC area, which is where this first class is going to end up being, to learn about CMMI 2.0, you should be signing up for our class, the very first CMMI 2.0 class we're doing. It's on May 7th through 9th. In Washington, D.C. area. And it's actually 2 classes. There's a Foundations of Capability class, and there's a Dev Excellence class that go together to create what essentially is the new version of Intro to CMMI. So you can sign up on our website, but do it quickly because people are already starting to sign up. And another cool thing we're doing is the 2 days following the class, we're presenting our Agile integration workshop, which is a mashup of the Scrum Master, Scrum Product Owner, and the CMMI integration class. So you can kind of figure out how to put those all together, because as you guys know, I wrote the book on that. So you'll be getting an updated copy of the book, and you'll be getting some other cool stuff at that class as well. So make sure to sign up. We'll see you in Washington. Thanks for watching.